I'm Natalie, a golf fitness trainer, and welcome back to my channel. Now, as golfers, we know that one of the most frustrating parts of the golf swing is creating hip turn and staying in that hip turn. For many golfers, they don't create enough rotation, particularly in the backswing, not getting deep enough into the hips, but they're not able to clear the hips in the downswing either, and really get into that lead leg and create that powerful hip rotation. So in this video, I've got an unusual move that will help you unlock your hips, creating more hip mobility in the backswing and enabling you to create more clearance, more rotation, more speed in the downswing. Before we start this exercise, it's important to understand a little bit of anatomy as to why golfers struggle with their hip turn. So when we typically think about hip turn, we're talking about rotating into the pocket through the backswing here, and then clearing this lead hip through the downswing as much as possible. Now, in order to create both of those rotations, what we're looking for physically is that the thigh bone here will rotate in the socket and the pelvis will rotate over the top of that. So as I'm here holding my hip bones in my backswing, you can see the bone here is rotated through into the hip socket and the pelvis has turned to my right hand side. As we then create that downswing motion, we're just doing the opposite thing in the other direction. So I'll rotate to my left thigh bone rotates into the hip socket and the pelvis has rotated towards my left. As we make the backswing motion, this is called internal rotation of my right leg. As we make the downswing motion, this is called internal rotation of my left leg. So in order for both of those rotations to happen, the pelvis has to be fluid and move well from a neutral position. Where most players come unstuck due to our daily lives, sitting down, lack of exercise, naturally how you're built, the pelvis becomes very compressed and restricts the internal rotation element. So when you're practicing and you're in your lessons and you're trying to create more turn here and it just doesn't feel very natural, we may be getting some sway or we may be getting this locked out, jarred position that a lot of players try to do as a result of not being able to rotate correctly. It's quite often because of compression through the pelvis, restricting the rotation at the joint. So this is the unusual move that will help you remove the compression and increase the rotation. This is one of my favorite exercises and it provides instant results, which is ideally what we want in our golf swing. So we're going to need to get down onto the floor for this one. I'm going to film this from various different angles so you can see as much as possible. It's a really simple move, but it looks quite complicated from just one angle. So I'm using a mat on the floor here to lie on, and I've got myself a 6 kilo kettlebell. Now, if you don't have a weight at home, I would start simply with a water bottle and fill it up, something that's got a tiny bit of weight and a little bit of resistance. So the idea of this exercise is basically to roll onto one side. As we do this motion, the leg or the hip that is on the floor is becoming decompressed. As I just explained in the anatomy part just before, the compression is restricting the rotation. So if we decompress the pelvis from this side, we increase the rotation at the hip joint. So let's run through how to do this. I'm going to start with my left-hand side so I end up closer to the camera. And I'm going to lie down flat on my back here. I've got the weight on my left-hand side because this is where I'm going to start. So my right leg and my right arm go completely straight, as straight a line as you possibly can make. Now, for some people, this may be a little bit tricky to start with. So if you can't get the arm all the way up here and it's hovering in the air, just come out to the side for now and that'll be more comfortable. Next, we're going to create 90 degrees through the leg. The knee sits directly over the hip. That's important. We don't want the leg out here and we don't want the leg pulled in too tight that it's pinching on the hip joint. It's got to sit perfectly over where your hip bones are at 90 degrees. The leg that's nice and straight, we want these toes facing up. We don't want this foot out to the side because that has rotated the leg already in the hip socket. We want this to sit nice and straight. I'm going to place the weight in my left hand and I'm pushing it straight up. So this dumbbell sits directly over my shoulder joint here. And the key thing to this exercise is that you make sure the weight remains over the shoulder and you keep looking the whole time at the weight. So even when your body moves, your eyes are always looking at the weight. The last thing we want is this to waver around and drop on your face. So I'm going to extend this arm overhead. From here, all I want to do is roll onto my right hand side here. I'm literally going to roll my left hip on top of my right hip, and it looks like this. I'll come all the way across, and I'm keeping my eyes on the weight. So this leg has hit the floor here, because that's as far as I can go. My left hip is now stacked on top of my right hip. My arm would obviously be here, and my left shoulder is roughly stacked on top of my right shoulder. My left rib cage is over my right rib cage. So all I've done is literally roll my left hand side onto my right hand side. From here, I'm just going to roll back. So the movement as one looks like this. Roll and push, keep my eyes on the weight, keep it nice and steady. So as I'm making this movement, I'm rolling onto the right hand side of my pelvis. As this is happening, we're decompressing that side of the pelvis, and my right thigh bone is rotating in the socket, my right hip socket of the right hand side of my body. So my left's rolling on top of my right, creating that motion. Now, one of the mistakes a lot of people make is they don't take their upper body with them. So they use the lower body really well here, and then they're stuck. You've got to roll the upper body with you and press that weight up to the ceiling. That will give you the full motion and full roll through this exercise. So let's take a quick look at the down the line overhead view, and you may see some more movement a little bit easier on this. I'm going to run through and set up exactly the same, but this time I'll roll onto my left hand side rather than my right hand side. So I'll extend left leg nice and straight, left arm overhead nice and straight, 90 degrees from the right leg hovering over the hip joint, press the weight directly over my shoulder, and then from here I'm going to roll all of my body weight onto this left hip here. So I'll roll across upper and lower body, keeping that weight directly over my shoulder and my eyes on the weight the whole time. I'll unroll myself back to the start position. So pushing off through the core, rolling all my weight onto my left hip, keeping my eyes on the weight at the top over my shoulder, and slowly roll back. So as I mentioned earlier, one of the most common mistakes with this exercise is people only reaching with the lower body. So trying to get the leg across here, it gets stuck because the upper body hasn't come with it. So as a movement, you've got to push the chest and the ribs over with your hips. Another mistake see people make with this exercise is letting this weight go in this direction. So as they move their body, their arm starts to go this way, and the heavier the weight, the worse that is for you. We don't want this weight traveling away from the body where it could potentially injure the shoulder joint here. With this exercise, we'd be looking for around 8 to 10 or 8 to 12 reps on each side. It needs to be done slowly and controlled, and really making sure that you feel like you get all the weight stacked onto the side that you're rolling on. Take the upper body with you and make sure that you can lengthen the line of the body as much as possible. So that was the unusual exercise to help increase your hip rotation in the golf swing. Give this exercise a try, it works a treat. I'd recommend even going to the range, hitting a few balls, doing this exercise, and then hitting some balls after and see how you feel. You know your body best, so try a before and after and see if it makes a difference for you. Hopefully it does. It's one of my favorites and it's worked with many clients that I train. Thanks for watching this video. I really appreciate you coming to my channel and watching the content here. I'll be back next week with loads more golf fitness. If you have questions, please leave them in the comments below. I'll do my best to answer them. And if you have any topics or any questions you'd like addressing about your golf swing, let me know and I'll aim to cover those in future videos. See you next time.